You want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered. And this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun.
Of Doug Collins' podcast, Kip Kiefer, Terry Quillian back to sit in for Doug today, and we are excited to be here. We have a very special guest that we want to introduce you to, so don't go anywhere. We're going to have a great show. It is the Doug Collins podcast, and it all happens in just a moment.
We are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been a disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a consistent issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market, and there have been major bank failures. And many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East that have potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. There are so many reasons that Americans should consider investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero-hassle, education-first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. That's what I do. So go to www.legacypminvestments.com to download their free gold investment guide. And look, I've read it. You need to read it. There's so much valuable information in there. So, friends, now's the time to not roll the dice with your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that gold and precious metals can offer you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals today and tell them that Doug Collins sent you. You might have heard Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of the box stores or the shopping channels the way they used to. They've been part of the cancel culture, so they want to pass the savings directly on to you by having a $25 extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just one product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products. Some of you may not even know about that. So to get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out the $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-pillow use MyPillows are just $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. There's 6-pack of towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels. You guessed it, just $25. And for the first time ever, the MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, just $25. All orders over $75 will see free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long, so go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Collins, that's COLLINS, or call 800-986-3994 today. That's promo code Collins.
Welcome back, everybody. Kip Kiefer, Terry Quillian filling in for Doug, and we are always honored to get that call and excited to come to you on this Friday. Hope you have a great weekend lined up. We're going to get you off to a good start on that because, Terry, I know you are joining me in being very excited that we have a very special guest.
Yes, we are very excited to have her with us today. And Becky, I just want to say I am thrilled to get to listen to you personally today.
Pastor Becky Tirabassi. I practiced all day and I screwed it up. Tirabassi. We are so happy to have you from California. You have done amazing work. I know you've authored 15 books. Is that correct? Yeah. My goodness.
Well, I'm a good old girl, you know.
Well, I tell you what, you are a productive girl, has a lot of things going on. And, you know, I think in this time of I guess we can call it turmoil, although people need to understand our times are not unique. There's always been adversity and turmoil and seeming chaos and unrest all over the course of the time that this country has been in place. But you are a very important spiritual voice, and we are really excited to just talk to you about your perception of where we are and how with all the voices that are riveting all around, bouncing off the walls everywhere, there's only one really significant voice we should be listening to.
Well, First of all, thank you for having me. And I have been for 40 years doing something that I would challenge you and your listeners to do as well. And I was a young mom at the time, so I wasn't a pastor or theologian or getting my degrees. I was a youth worker in Cleveland, Ohio. And I went to this convention where all the former presidents of Youth for Christ were speaking. And they talked about prayer. And I remember thinking, oh no, you have to be old to pray. You need to be, a monk or a nun, but youth workers don't pray. We're too busy for prayer. And then every former president, including, presidents of then presidents of colleges, they'd gone on, president of World Vision, formerly Billy Graham, every single one of them. The first Youth for Christ worker was Billy Graham. They talked about prayer, the power of prayer, the adventure of prayer, the importance of prayer. And I'm thinking, I'm missing something. And I had a very dramatic conversion to Christ. Most people who've heard my story have never forgotten it. A janitor led me to Christ, and it was,
wow.
yeah. And, it was at this place. And as a youth worker, I went, I'm not praying. And so I did something, and I made a decision. It was 40 years ago, February 18th, to pray 1 hour a day for the rest of my life. And quickly I understood that prayer is not just talking. It's listening and talking, this two-way conversation when we open the Bible and hear God speak, and then we speak back to him. And I would tell you, God gave me an idea. I hit the road running with Bible in hand and teaching men, women, and students to pray for it's been 40 years. 40 years, 1 hour a day. It's like 14,600 and some days later or hours later. But about 7 years ago, I was guest chaplain of the United States House of Representatives. And while I stood in the dais and prayed, I had a kind of thought, impression, call, come back and pray. I thought, well, that's a great idea, but with whom, when, where, and how? That's how I think. I didn't know any members except my own. And at this point, I know at least 100 members. I pray weekly. I have a prayer house called the Lead House in Washington, D.C. I pray with members of Congress, and we read the Bible daily. So the challenge to you and your listeners is you don't need to be a politician or a pastor. You for sure could be a parent and do this, but to read the Bible daily and pray with your sphere of influence weekly will change our nation and turn it back to God. And so, gauntlet laid down, here we go. That's my challenge.
Wow.
Oh, speechless.
Terry, I think, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but Becky, we're hoping that perhaps you have an uplifting message or spiritual communication that you can convey, or let's just call it what we're talking about, a prayer for our country and our people that are struggling with different problems, and we would be really honored if you could just give us a short blessing on our show to all of our listeners.
Well, I think it would be a memorable acrostic, LEAD. LEAD. I named the house in Washington where I pray with members, the Lead House. And L stands for loyalty to God's word. I wasn't kidding when I said I read the Bible daily. There is a one-year Bible. I use a special edition, Change Your Life Daily Bible. I did it all through Women of Faith, all through Youth Specialties. I've traveled to 48 states in our United States, teaching people to open the Bible daily. And in 15 minutes a day, you'll have read the entire Bible. Teenagers do it. Parents do it. Teachers. Of course, our politicians around the table at the Lead House do it. But loyalty to God's word, as you mentioned, Kip, and I know you feel strongly about as well, Terry, there are so many voices, so much distraction, so many times we get confused, but the Word of God isn't confusing. It brings clarity, and the whole Old Testament and New Testament, reading it daily, gives you momentum. It gives you a peace. It begins to, actually, the Word of God says it warns you and it rewards you. And so often you're about to do something, say something impulsively. That would be me. And I read something very simply in the Bible today. It was the book of Acts, how Peter preached boldly and said, like, I'm really going to do what they say. I'm going to do what God says. It was that simple. Any teenager or adult could read those words and go, okay, that was for me. And so we're loyal to God's word. We've probably distributed 300 or 400 Bibles among members over the last 7 years, just our little group of prayers at the Lead House who are members of Congress. The L is for everyone. We must pick up the Bible daily and let God speak to us rather than it. My husband always says, don't say, I read my Bible today. Said, I heard God's voice today.
Oh,
You
that's
heard
a
God's
big
voice
difference.
today. It's a wonderful difference. The E is for encouragement. Now you've got to look around your sphere of influence. Discouragement, criticism, deceit, lying. It's like everywhere you turn. It's very hard to watch the news. Be the one who gives a word of encouragement, who gives a word, which means I'm going to give you courage, Terry. Keep going with this show. I'm going to give
I'll
you
take all the courage, Becky, please.
I'm going to give, yes, I'm going to give you courage, Kip. You love your sons. Everybody needs to love their children. They're all knuckleheads, and so are we. But to love them, speak truth to them, encourage them, guide them. And you can do this for your coworkers, the young generation. Be the encourager. And really, I like to think if anyone walks into the Lead House, no one's going to roll their eyes if they're not your politician. They don't like your politics, because it's a safe place. You'll be encouraged here. You'll be given a cup of coffee. You'll be given words to go off in the day. And, my favorite now, I think, is let's go. And everybody's like, okay. So if you're watching women's softball, every time a girl makes a hit, you can't hear her words, but you see her say, let's go. She's trying to encourage the sideline, the bench, do something, say something, make a difference. We can be those encouragers. And of course, I was a cheerleader, so it's kind of more natural for me, but you can write a note, you can send a text, the little hearts that we send with love. Add that to the end of your text that might sound a little snarky. Just throw a little heart in there so they know I'm not being smart and snarky. I'm just trying to move us forward. The A in lead is advocacy. I got my my master's in chaplaincy. I as well did my summative paper on prevention of suicide. And I think every American can agree that advocacy for the young generation, specifically prevention of suicide, would be an admirable, honorable pursuit in your life. And my summative paper was full of research, and it was very simple. One of the main reasons young adults and children or young people consider suicide, or older people, is because of unforgiveness. Now, it's that simple. If we begin to say, whom have I not forgiven? Why am I holding on to this resentment? All the research, scientific, not even religion, shows us unforgiveness is the main cause. So let's go after it. Let's be the ones to make amends, offer forgiveness. I often attend AA with kids. I'm like, this is hard to do alone. I'll go with you. I have 46 years of sobriety. I have a sober, sensitive church. I'm like, I want to be the safe place. And there's lots of mocktails and coffee and iced tea out there for everybody. But
well, Becky, this has been tremendously uplifting, and I can't thank you enough for being with us. How do people get in touch with your ministry and what you're doing? How can they access your materials?
Well, I have to end the D, lead, devoted to prayer. And most of my books are on prayer. Most of my encouragement is that way. So at Becky Tirabassi or Linktree / Becky Tirabassi, all social media, Becky Tirabassi. But I want to encourage your listeners. Make today different. Walk out of this interview, wherever you're listening to it, and become a leader, LEAD, loyal to God's
I love that.
encouraging advocate, devoted to prayer.
Well, this has been tremendous. Terre, Becky shared with me too. Terre is the, our other gigs are sports related, college football. Becky shared with me that she's big into college football, Terre. So she's in our camp. And, was it your son or daughter who attended that orange college above us, Tennessee?
My son went to the University of Tennessee, and he's a Vol, and he still wears orange. Still.
Of
And
course.
a little bit like a
Of
redneck
course.
with facial hair. I'm like, what happened? A surfer? Boom. No more.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on, and we would like to invite you to come back anytime that you're inclined, because I know an uplifting message is something that is in very short supply. I'll share with the listeners. Becky texted me the other day and said, now remember, I'm a pastor, not a politician. And I shared back, the world would be a lot better place if we had a lot more pastors and a lot less politicians. So, Becky, thank you so much for joining us. And we God bless you for all the wonderful work you're doing. And I hope people will access your materials, because just a little bit I've known of you in our brief time being acquainted, you are one impressive individual, and congratulations for all your success and all of the wonderful messaging you do.
Well, Terre, I hope to get to know you better. Kip, I've read a little of your book, and I hope to get to know you even better as well. Maybe show up at a game with you.
Oh, that sounds great. We'd love to have you down here in SEC country.
Woo!
Becky Tirabassi, everybody,
Becky.
our special guest today. We want to thank her for being on. And Terre, I don't know about you, but I am uplifted.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, Kip, in these days, we need all the uplifting we can get. My goodness. Things in our
That's for
country
sure.
right now appear to be going from bad to worse.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week. I know the format on the Doug Collins podcast is for Fridays to be a little lighter. So Terre and I aren't going to give you any kind of serious big items today, but there's some things I think we need to discuss. And one of the things, Terre, I think we've become specialists in doing is sort of correcting the record a little bit when some information is conveyed that's not exactly correct or has been colored to persuade people to go a different direction. And we're seeing several of those situations now. I think I shared with you that earlier in the week, I was watching one of the news programs, and they have the panels that come in, and somebody said, well, this is unprecedented in our country. Never before have we had an incumbent president who was the predecessor to the current president and be able to compare their administrations side by side. That information is erroneous.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank goodness we have you, Kip, who has the best historical knowledge of any friend that I have. Tell us about when this has happened before.
Well, in 1884, the governor of New York, Grover Cleveland, was elected president. New York at that time, Terre, as it sort of still is now, although it's not critical to win the presidency, but with a lot less states and a lot less population, New York commanded such a massive amount of people that you had to pretty much win New York to win the presidency. And Grover Cleveland was governor of New York. So he wins the election. And when he came up for re-election in 1888, he ran against Benjamin Harrison, who was the grandson of a former president, William Henry Harrison, who only lasted 30 days before he passed away right after his inaugural speech, basically. But Benjamin Harrison actually won New York because it was the first election ever that there was massive amounts of money poured into the campaign, because he had the biggest captains of industry in the world, John Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, and J.P. Morgan, just bankrolling and basically buying the election in the state of New York. Harrison beat the former governor of New York and won the presidency. 4 years later, Cleveland came back as the nominee against the incumbent Harrison. This time their roles were reversed. And just like you and I are not going to be shy about saying what we're rooting for, the previous president, who was defeated as an incumbent, came back and defeated the guy that beat him. So there is a historical precedent. You can compare these administrations side by side, and it's pretty revealing what you're going to see.
And actually, it's interesting, Kip, because if you get rid of the labels, because the labels, the parties have changed so much,
Yes.
Grover Cleveland was the populist candidate.
Yes.
Harrison was the candidate of the establishment. He was very much the establishment candidate. And Grover Cleveland was the populist. And it was very unusual at the time to have a Democrat be successful in running for the presidency. He was unusual in doing this. And one of the pillars of his campaign had to do with, get this, slowing the rampant inflation that had occurred during Harrison's term. Does that sound familiar at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Terry, it amazes me, and we didn't talk about this, but I just want to get your reaction. It amazes me when you talk to people that say, I don't care about history. I think it's boring. I cannot comprehend that kind of statement, that kind of attitude, because by becoming a student of history, you see how cyclical it is. History repeats itself. You're darn right it does.
Absolutely. It's back to that old saying, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. So there is a tremendous amount of information that is important to have there. But I think what we're finding today, Kip, is you have a lot of people talking with very little knowledge on their part about what has really happened, what has really gone on. An example of where I think people had a lot of knowledge and just flat out lied about it, we're seeing unfolding earlier this week with the whole Hunter Biden laptop story, which it now turns out that those 51 experts in national security who swore that the laptop was Russian disinformation, totally false. That is totally made up. It makes me think that saying, is that made up? It sounds like made up. That was totally made up. It has now been completely authenticated. And yet those same folks who put forward that completely false story that Kip, they had to know was false because there's nothing on the laptop. I mean, there was never Russian meddling on behalf of the Trump campaign. That was completely a fiction perpetrated on the Democrat side. So they had to know that that wasn't true. And yet, do you see any of those people being called out?
No.
No.
Terry, here's what astounds me. The prosecutors dramatically hold up the laptop. Nobody's ever seen it. We've been hearing about the laptop, Miranda Devine's book, The Laptop from Hell. We've been hearing about it for weeks and months and years. And all of a sudden, here's the laptop. They hold it up like it's the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant in the courtroom and show it to the jury and the judge and everybody else. But here's what really disturbs me. The FBI went to this computer repair store when reports surfaced that the computer owner or the store owner had a Hunter Biden laptop. This was during the presidential campaign or before the 2020 campaign. This is in 2019. They confiscated that machine a year before the election year and had it in their possession. And good and well, the FBI was fully aware that it was authentic and it was the real deal because they'd already scrutinized it, but they were just sitting on it. There was no talk about it. Nobody knew it existed. And all of a sudden, Rudy Giuliani and the New York Post got cooperative. Giuliani was represented by somebody else that this computer guy had a commonality to. Bottom line is, when the threat that this material was going to appear in the New York Post, the Biden campaign actually contacted these intelligence officials and organized this letter declaring it disinformation.
And Kip, what's so important to me about the laptop in this whole story, it's not that the laptop demonstrates that Hunter Biden was a very sick, depraved, cocaine addict. That is not the important part. The important part, first, it's like, the cover up is always worse than the crime. The first thing that is so important and upsetting is the lies that these 51 intelligence folks were willing to tell to keep Donald Trump from being in power and to have Joe Biden win instead. The second thing that's important about Hunter and his depraved lifestyle, it's all the other information on the laptop about the business dealings with Burisma and Joe Biden's involvement in that. And that's what they crucially had to
the Biden family business. Terry, I got a quick question for you. What product, service, consultation, guidance, what did the Biden family business provide?
Connections.
That's
and those connections were enough to enable Hunter Biden to have this incredible fortune coming in from Burisma, which Kip, you don't hear talk because Burisma doesn't exist anymore. That was a Ukrainian natural gas company with Chinese partners in it. Is nobody putting two and two together with the billions of dollars we're sending to Ukraine and Hunter Biden's shady business dealings with Burisma into Ukraine, and then Hunter Biden on the laptop talking about the money that has to go to Pop for every deal. Now, are we supposed to pretend that we don't know who Pops is?
No kid. Or the big guy.
Seriously, the big guy?
Yeah, it's ridiculous, Terry. $87,000 a month to serve on the Burisma board, and he has no background. He's a clearly an established drug addict. He has just been discharged from the Navy a few years before for continuing cocaine abuse. I can just see these executives going, "Gosh, we need somebody on the board who really can who can really add something to our operation. Let's get somebody with absolutely no experience with a terrible drug problem. Let's get Hunter Biden." I don't think those credentials is what earned him that seat.
No, and when Joe was asked about it and asked what qualifications Hunter had to be on that board, this was years ago when he was asked the question, he says, well, he's just a really bright kid. Now, Kip,
the smartest man I've ever known is what he says.
The use of the word kid brings me to something really important that you brought up yesterday. I want you to share that with our audience.
Well, Terry, the way this is being spun by the mainstream media, and let's quote the late, great Rush Limbaugh, the drive-by media.
Yes.
It's being portrayed as a father's loving concern for his son. And what family, and every story now, and you watch this and you'll see I'm telling the truth. Every story says, what family has not gone through a family member who's fighting addiction problems and drugs, and a father's concern for his child? Hunter Biden, his child? Terry, I'm going to let you spill the beans. How old is the child, Hunter Biden?
Is Hunter 51 or 54?
54.
Now? 54 years old. I mean, they make it sound like he's an adolescent. The man is 54 years old.
I mean, he's making his choices. He's not being swayed by coercive evil forces or forced into a life of drug abuse. He testified in his own voice from recordings on his computer that crack cocaine took him to the darkest recesses of himself, and only then could he really see what was truly actual or real or whatever he said. I mean, it's just unbelievable that this is being portrayed now as some kind of persecution of Hunter Biden, and it's ignored completely. The Biden family business, like you said on the laptop, yes, there's tons of depraved behavior on there. There's sex parties. There's rampant drug abuse. But the big thing that's on that laptop is total implication for the Biden family, crime family, let's call it. Joe Biden, his brother James Biden, and Hunter basically panhandling with all of our geopolitical foes for millions of dollars.
I know, it's unbelievable. And the other thing that I think is interesting is that Dan Bongino, sorry, Dan, didn't mean to mess your name up there, friend. Dan Bongino was talking this week about what loving father sends his drug-addicted son overseas to engage in shady business
on Air Force
dealings,
Two, by the way.
On Air Force Two, that he's then going to get a cut out of. And Kip, he was on Air Force Two then. He's been on Air Force One now and back in the White House. It's like Joe Biden wants to spit in the face of Americans by saying, and make us think that we're crazy, gaslight us by being like, here's my son, Hunter. I am so proud of him. He's going to be with me in the White House everywhere. That's really Joe Biden thumbing his nose at those of us who know better. I really did enjoy hearing from his ex-girlfriend who, this is how in the tank the mainstream media is. I was reading today her being described as a dancer at a gentleman's club.
Well, everybody needs a solid job.
Yeah, a gentleman's club. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
We know that's what it really is,
She's a stripper, folks. That's what the AKA. Terry, I wanted to kind of finish that original thought of the dramatic holding up of the laptop. The very first witness in the Hunter Biden trial was an FBI electronics and communications expert who verified that absolutely, positively, this laptop was Hunter Biden's. It's 100% authentic. Now, I'm going to ask you this. In 2019, when they had possession of that computer, don't you believe that the FBI would have established that in the first 5 minutes of their possession of that machine?
100%.
So it's absolutely unconscionable. And anybody who doesn't believe, if you think the deep state or the swamp or the shadow government in Washington is not real, here's this laptop in possession of the FBI. These former intelligence, including 5 directors, signed this letter that say this is likely Russian disinformation. The FBI knows, Terry, as soon as that's released to the press, that that's an absolute bold-faced lie. And did the FBI, the integrity, the premier law enforcement dedicated to fidelity and integrity and all of their other hallmarks, did anybody in the FBI go, wait a minute, this is not Russian disinformation? They did not say a word.
Well, Kip, isn't this the same organization that conducted a raid at Mar-a-Lago, which was absolutely absurd, that included a deadly force authorization? I believe that's the same agency that did that, right?
The same one. Same one that has declared parents that are concerned about the education of their children domestic terrorists.
Yeah, exactly. And did you know that today I've been hearing something that started on Thursday of this week, which is all of these folks, that there are the 51 folks, talking about how horrible it's going to be if Donald Trump's elected. They're going to be targeted and they're going to have to leave the country. Okay, the nerve of them talking about that. First of all, if they hadn't done anything wrong, they wouldn't have to worry about it. But secondly, after the incredible targeting of President Trump, and then today being like one day after Steve Bannon is sent to jail for defying a subpoena. That's the whole thing, defying a subpoena in front of Congress. Does anybody remember Hunter Biden walking out of Congress, refusing to testify and defying this subpoena? This is absurd. Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon in jail for exerting privilege over communications with the president of the United States. However, you can go through Hillary Clinton, Hunter Biden, a whole list of top Democrat operatives who have refused subpoenas to Congress. Has anything happened to them? No. So now all of these operatives in the FBI and the CIA talking about how terrified they are. They're not talking about what they did wrong. Do you know, I haven't heard one apology, not one. They're terrified that Trump will come back after them. Well, you know what? You should be scared.
Well, the bottom line is a lot of this country, a lot of the policies, if anybody believes that Joe Biden, I heard another talking head say this week, well, it's just going to come down to the policies of both men, Trump against Biden. Biden has no policies. Biden has no functioning brain cells at this point.
Well, Kip,
Biden is wound up.
Anybody that saw President Biden earlier this week and that truly horrifying, despicable showing that he made in France for D-Day, that was the most embarrassing thing ever. Anybody who saw that, I don't believe that they can still come back and be saying that Joe Biden is actually functioning well. In fact, it's amazing. I have heard crickets out of the normal Democrat operatives since all of that. I was all caught on video since all of that video has been released this week.
Wow. I mean, again, they want to tell you that he's vigorous and he's sharp as a tack and he's on top of everything. And this is his administration. But we have eyes, we have ears, we have functioning brains. I mean, they're telling you what you're seeing and hearing and percepting is false. Listen to what we tell you, because we're telling you the truth. Don't believe what you actually witness yourself.
Well, Kip, after that really horrifying display in Normandy, there have actually been lots of rumblings from the political consultant class in the Democrat Party that there is a movement to have Kamala Harris take over his position. I used to believe that he would absolutely be the nominee they would go forward with. And after seeing what happened in Normandy, I don't really see how they can do that.
On the heels of the Wall Street Journal article coming out that has 45 different people talking about his completely obvious and dramatic decline, and half of those people are Democrats. So it may be the getting near to the end of the line for I was going to call him Jersey Joe. I don't know where I'm sure he's claimed time there too, along with his heritage as a Puerto Rican and a Black American and a big rig truck driver.
That's right.
And now, Terry, how about that? Roger Staubach beat him out of a chance to play quarterback at Navy in 1962.
For any of y'all who know us, Kip and I have several regular ongoing sports shows that we do. And the idea of Joe Biden, being just neck and neck with Roger Staubach to have been the quarterback at Navy is absurd on its face. Just absurd.
This just in, he never attended the Naval Academy, so that's what he kind of led you to believe. That, later on he said, no, I didn't go there because Roger Staubach was already the quarterback. Well, that wasn't true. Roger Staubach didn't start till a year after Joe Biden graduated from high school, so nobody was blocking his path at that point. But I can't even find any evidence, Terry, that he even played football in high school. So what comes out of Joe's mouth and what emanates from Joe's remains of his gray matter upstairs is almost always going to be something absolutely off the wall. I mean, I still am losing sleep thinking about poor Uncle Bosie being accosted by cannibals in New Guinea during World War II.
Yeah, exactly. And not just accosted, eaten by cannibals.
Yes.
His uncle was eaten by cannibals. I mean, you really, truly cannot make this stuff up, folks.
So, folks, when they pull at your heartstrings, recognize the what they're saying, and don't get fooled. Let's repeat this once again. Hunter Biden is 54 years old. He is not a teenager. He is not a wayward, lost soul in his 20s. He's 54 years old, and he's brought in millions of dollars by selling influence to his father. And those are obvious facts, and that's not speculation.
No, it's obviously facts. And the whole idea that Jill is there to support her son. He's not her son. But then anybody that's heard what Hunter wrote in the laptop about Jill, there's no way she's there out of devotion to him.
He called her the stupidest woman on the face of the earth on his laptop. But it's just a happy, totally unified family.
Yeah, they're just like this.
The more you see, the more you just shake your head, and it's almost like a really bad novel that you just say this is just beyond comprehension. But I think the American people have been awakened. I think we've put woke aside for awake, and thank God we've reached that point. So we got to wind it down here, but want to get your final thoughts as we get ready for another chapter here. It's kind of amazing. Already being in June, this Hunter Biden trial is going to wind up in the next week or so. Looks like the prosecution may even rest today on Friday. And I'm wondering what your perception is. Is the fix going to be in here, or this open and shut case? Is it truly open and shut?
I don't think it matters, Kip. I really don't care at all if Hunter Biden lied on a form to get to acquire a gun. I think what was important, and also let's just keep in mind his father can pardon him. These are federal crimes. His father can pardon him just like that. So none of this matters. And, I do worry that even if he's found guilty in particular, that the Democrats will try to make it analogous to Trump being found guilty for a crime that nobody can say what it is or describe or whatever. So I think that's completely unimportant. I really could care less about that. I think what was important about all this is to be able to get out into the public record the lies on the part of the Biden administration and all of these former espionage experts, and to be able to showcase the information that's in the laptop regarding the Biden family crime syndicate That's the information that to me is the most important. I could care less what happens to Hunter Biden.
Well, I'm anxious because there's no question there's two tiers of justice in this country, and if this case actually winds down to its obvious conclusion, a guilty verdict. Again, I'm like you. I'm not passionate about throw the book at Hunter. Whatever. Hunter just represents everything that's wrong right now with this whole situation, that he's insulated. Terry, this trial wouldn't even be happening. They had the all-time sweetheart deal that they were just going to try to hope the judge rubber stamped. The judge, remember, in that hearing last summer said, have any of you ever seen any kind of agreement like this before? I have never. This is unbelievable, the things that you're offering here. And it fell apart because we finally had a judge in the system that had the integrity to call this travesty what it was. So I'm really interested to see how that all unfolds, but I'm really excited about it's just at the end of this month. We are supposedly going to see good old Joe, Uncle Joe, and Donald Trump on stage.
Yeah, and how he's going to do that after that performance in Normandy,
I don't know.
I cannot imagine it. And and Kip, it's also not jet lag. He got to France on board Air Force One, which, by the way, folks, has a bedroom on it. He got there, and then he got there a day early, and they called a lid for him.
Yeah, he landed at 6 a.m.
Yeah,
so that's not just a couple hour lid. That's like a 30-hour lid.
Yeah, exactly. So he had plenty of time to rest up. So this is not a jet lag situation. I don't know how they'll have enough drugs to be able to get him to perform in that.
Well, let's conclude. Maybe right before the debate on June 27th, a PA announcer is going to come on and, ladies and gentlemen, batting for Joe Biden, number 5, Gavin Newsom.
Mm-hmm.
So I would not be surprised. You said it the last time we hosted the show. This group is capable of anything. And so buckle your seatbelt, folks. We might see some wild action as they try to maintain their grip on power and try to transform our country. Terry, this has been great. I want to thank again Pastor Becky Tirabassi for coming on and with all of her uplifting thoughts. I hope everybody enjoyed that. We always love coming to you here on the Doug Collins podcast, and we wish everybody a wonderful weekend, and keep the faith, everybody. We're going to get there. It might look dark, but the light is just ahead. Kip Kiefer, Terry Quillian, thank you again for listening. We will catch you next time here on the Doug Collins podcast.